Good morning, Heathrow. Are you alive and well? Oh, now come on. This is going to be a long day. Let's try that one again. Good morning, Heathrow. Are you alive and well? Thank goodness for that. It is amazing to see you. Welcome to the Licensed Private Hire Car Association Conference with my good friend Steve. Round of applause before we start, because he's put an awful lot of work into this. Well, what a couple of years that was. It's been tough, isn't it? And nobody has faced it more than you have. My name's John Curtis. I'm a motoring journalist. I was the head of sustainable transport for the Scottish Government, and I've spent the last 10 years getting people out of their private cars and doing better, more efficient, cleaner things, because it matters. Today, my job is to try to keep everybody in order, to try to keep everybody to time, and to try to make sure that you get the very best out of today that you can. I will be ruthless with time, so if we are falling behind, trust me, I was built 6'4" and this big for a reason. We will have people dragged from stages, but we will get through today. Some domestics first. There are no fire drills planned, so if the alarm goes off, follow the very big, bold man that runs in that direction towards the exits, all signposted in green. Turn off mobile phones if you would be so kind. Certainly have them on silent. And for the first person whose phone rings, it's your first round at the bar when we've finished. We've got Q&A sessions, which we're going to operate at the end of the first session and other sessions throughout the day. If you want to ask a question, hand in the air, let us know your name, the organisation you work with, and somebody will come to you with a microphone. Okay? Name, who you work for, and then your question. Inevitably, we'll get somebody who doesn't do it, so I will remind you. To put your mind at rest, parking. Parking today is free. So you just drive in, leave your car, drive out. No tickets, no nothing, all simple. Right, okay. Let me start by thanking our sponsors. We've got 3 sponsors, Cab 9, Cab Treasure, and Cordic, without whom today would be a little bit more difficult. So many, many thanks to our sponsors. And before we do anything else, I want to talk about you guys. Thank you, genuinely, from the bottom of my heart. And I'll tell you why. Because you are the private hire industry. And you have always been there. Through the difficult last couple of years, you are the people who've kept Britain moving. They say that heroes wear masks, but not all heroes wear masks and capes. I see no capes here today. Has anybody got a cape? No. But I tell you what, you are definitely superheroes. We relied on you. Us ordinary people who had to sit at home and watch the world go by, you saved us all. Because you brought us medical supplies. You brought us parcels. You brought us food. You delivered patients. You cared. Was it tough? I'm sure you will tell me over the next 6 hours how tough it has been. But you have survived. Sadly, some of our members, sadly, some of those drivers, sadly, some of our community didn't make it. Our job is to keep doing what we do to the best of our ability. There are going to be challenging times. We know that there's increased regulation. We know that there are increased laws around air quality and how you perform. We know of the fuel crisis and what a nightmare that is for you. But we also know that if there is any group of people who can meet those challenges, it is you. Why do I say that with such confidence? Because after a global pandemic, after so many challenges being thrown in your way, you still continue to do the thing that we, society, needs, and I can't thank you enough. So we've done the sponsors. Oh, I've got all emotional. Oh, I've gone. Right, today, 11:30, kick-off, first presentations, an overview. Bet you can't wait for this. HMRC, that's a great way to start the day. Yeah, let's talk taxes. Yes, you must be from HMRC. Once we've been through HMRC, we're going to have a Q&A session. Then we're going to get into TfL and talking with TfL about English language statutory standards. And that's going to be challenging for some. But we're all here to support, we're all here to work together to get through that new arrangement. And the first Senior Trade Representatives Expert Panel session will then happen. So there'll be lots of opportunity for you to ask questions and to really get inside the knowledge base that's here today. Between 1 and 2, it's lunchtime. Happy days. So good lunch, and then we'll be back here at 2:30 for second presentation. You get a quick welcome back from me. I'll need to know how the lunch was because I probably won't see any because I'll be doing lots of that. But we'd be interested to hear what you have to say. So very quickly, when you come back, I'll ask you, how was lunch? What did you think? Good, bad? Because we need to know. We'll be talking about Heathrow Airport, terminal drop-offs, and how much that's going to cost. The fuel crisis has to be said. I think Steve has done a remarkable job in handling the fuel crisis communications with government, and we'll hear some more about that later. Another panel later on this afternoon with Q&A, more opportunity for you to ask questions, especially close to my heart around air quality. 40,000 people every year die as a result of transport emissions. Air quality is a major, major issue for you guys. 4 o'clock, show ends. You can beat it then to the social event of the year. Who's not looking forward to that? I even saw smiles. There is a discounted pop-up bar. Come on, this is good. Live music, 5 o'clock, there'll be some nosh. And at 7:30, all being well, those of us of a slight disposition will move on and we'll go and do other things. The hardcore really kicks in then, and there will be, I understand, some drinks taken at the bar. Okay, with that, shall we kick off and welcome to the stage via Steve, HMRC. Steve, are you going to do an introduction?
I wasn't planning on John, but the HMRC, we have been having dialogue for 2 years on conditionality. Colleagues at the Department for Transport and Government kindly contacted me and said that conditionality will be coming in and it will be affecting every single operator and every single driver. I think initially in England and Wales, and then in Scotland and other parts of the UK. We'd like to thank Jamie from the HRC for coming today, and he's going to take you through it. This affects licensing regimes as well as licensed operators and drivers. Everybody's going to be affected, so it's our job as the LPHCA to make you aware. Now, I don't suppose I'm going to get any more Christmas presents for inviting the revenue along. However, you need to know what's coming down, and Jamie's here today to do it. And I think I should have done that presentation, but I'm not following the notes properly. Thank you very much, Jamie.
Thank you very much indeed. Can you all hear me okay, hopefully? Give me a shout if you need me to speak up or come closer to the mic. Thank you very much, Steve. Do we have the slides? Oh, okay, it's me, is it?
There are a couple of seats down the front as well.
Thank you.
People would like to see. particularly the expert panel members, please come down to the front. Thank you.
Don't be shy. At least 2 seats here, 2 there, 2 there. You can't stand all day. Be brave.
We've had to space the seats out for a little bit of distancing, the table format, so those that didn't get a seat didn't come in early, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you very much, Steve, and the LPHCA for making time for me to talk about this new policy measure, particularly amongst such a packed agenda and also when there's such a range of critical issues for you all to discuss today. My name is Jamie Horton. I'm an Assistant Director leading on policy and strategy within the part of HMRC that works with individuals and small businesses. Over the next few minutes, and I think I've got about 15 minutes or so, I'm going to talk about the new tax checks which Parliament passed in the most recent Finance Act 2021, that's Schedule 33 of the Finance Act, if anyone's interested. I'm going to show you some details of how the checks will work in practice, including some screenshots from our digital prototype, which colleagues in HMRC digital team and the Government Digital Service are busily working on at the moment. I'm also very happy to take any questions that you have, whether at the end of this session or throughout the rest of the day. I'm in the information zone just over at stall 35. So, some key information about the new tax checks. What are they? As Steve mentions, these new tax rules apply to licensing, including private hire driver and operator licensing in England and Wales from April 2022. As Steve mentioned, the government has also announced an extension of that policy to equivalent schemes in Scotland and Northern Ireland from 2023, and we've recently consulted on that measure. They require applicants to complete a tax check prior to getting a licence renewal, and they come into effect, as I say, from the 4th of April next year. In terms of what the policy is intended to do, this is about ensuring people are on HMRC's systems as they should be. It's intended to support the sectors, actually, and support people into the tax system at the right time. So it's really about strengthening the overall approach through licensing in a way that helps to ensure a level playing field, and that is really the key to what we're trying to achieve here, and supports wider licensing objectives as well. As Steve mentions, we've worked quite closely with other parts of government and external stakeholders through a couple of rounds of public consultation, three, I think, public consultations and some formal dialogue as well with lots of the licensing bodies and trade representatives so far. But we're now moving into implementation, so it's critical that we can get the message out there about the changes that are coming and what stakeholders need to do to prepare. So the scope of the check is limited. It's limited to ensuring people are properly registered for tax if they're an individual or company, if they need to be, and that includes income tax or self-assessment or corporation tax. In terms of what the policy doesn't do, it doesn't gather extra information or impose extra tax requirements on anybody. For example, it won't ask people to show that they've reported income accurately or paid tax due. It's that simple binary question of whether or not a person is known to HMRC in respect of the income they're earning under their licence. The only information that HMRC will disclose to a licensing body will be confirmation that an applicant has completed the tax check. So alongside some basic identifying information as well for the licensing body. So there won't be any tax-related information whatsoever going out to licensing bodies. That stays within HMRC entirely. So in all of this, there's an emphasis on simplicity. The aim is to ensure the check is as simple and easy to complete as possible. The information that needs to be provided by an applicant is up on the screen there as part of the tax check. It's limited to the date when the applicant got their first licence, the length of the most recent licence, and how the applicant pays tax on the income earned from the licence. And the applicant will input the information through a new HMRC digital service that, as I mentioned, is being built at the moment, and that will enable them to confirm that they've completed the tax check to a licensing body, and we'll see a bit more about that shortly. That confirmation needs to be gathered by the licensing body under the legislation as part of the normal preliminary checks that licensing bodies carry out before issuing licenses. So that will, of course, require some changes to the administration that licensing bodies carry out before issuing licenses. And as I say, we've worked to ensure those changes are minimal and the checks won't be lengthy to carry out. And I'll talk to you a bit more about what the check looks like in a moment. As I say, we've consulted twice on the measure, three times on the measure, and done some informal consultation as well. But we're very happy to continue the conversation through to the implementation period and beyond. Okay, so on this next slide is a bit of information about how the tax checks themselves will operate. These will be carried out by the applicant using a new service that we're building, as mentioned. The service will be hosted on gov.uk alongside the wider information that's available for licensed applicants. The questions that applicants will need to answer will be multiple choice. They won't require anyone to input figures or detailed tax information or anything like that. And the intention is that the check can be completed within just a handful of minutes. And we're aiming to get the phrasing and the questions and the user interface as simple and as clear as possible. As part of the development of the service at the moment, we're going through quite a rigorous process of user testing with some of the user groups who use the new service. That involves licensees themselves and licensing bodies. And we're also doing research with others who engage with people in the user groups and who have insight into their requirements, and that includes tax agents with a specialist interest in the sectors concerned. As part of that user testing, we're asking users to complete prototypes of the tax check and gather feedback on what works and what doesn't to make the final design as streamlined as possible. Of course, all the details that I'll show in the subsequent slide are subject to that caveat that we're still iterating the service, we're still doing user research, and what you see now might look a bit different to the final approach. So all the details subject to change on that basis. Another major feature of the service is that support will be available for those who aren't able to complete the tax check using the digital service, whether that's because of accessibility or other barriers. And we understand that some users will require that extra bit of support, and we've got quite good provision for that support in the customer service provision within HMRC, but we're also thinking carefully about what extra support applicants might need in the sectors concerned. So there will be a route for people to contact HMRC and complete the checks via other methods where they need to, and that will generally be through phone contact to HMRC operatives. So, over the next few slides, I'm going to run through some screenshots which show how the tax check will work in practice. To demonstrate this, we'll look at a typical user journey for an applicant who's in self-assessment. The journey for companies will be similar, but the wording of questions will be slightly different. But the broad process will be the same. So give you a bit of a flavour of how the check will work. I'm aiming to have access to our full working prototype on my computer in the information zone. So that should enable you to look at how the interface differs slightly for different types of users. But I'm having a couple of little niggles on the technology, so I'll try to iron that out after the session today. So this is what applicants will see when they come onto gov.uk and come through the government gateway to complete the tax check. As you can see, the first question simply asks applicants to confirm the type of licence that they're applying for. It's quite simple, multiple choice. So they move through that screen. The next two questions ask some further information about the licence that's being applied for. These are aimed at the system to capture some information about the length of time that a person has held a licence. Now, the purpose of these questions is to enable us to evaluate the effectiveness of the policy at large. Because this is a new approach, it's very important that we can start gathering that information to understand how effective it is in supporting compliance and supporting licensing objectives. And these questions will help us to build that overall analytical picture. They're not intended to sort of inform compliance activity per se. So again, multiple choice, hopefully fairly easily understandable. The next two questions are the tax-related questions that comprise the tax check. The first question asks applicants to confirm their tax status, and that's the question on the left of the screen. So this allows for the fact that they may not need to be in self-assessment at all, actually. For example, they may be carrying out their licensed activity as an employee, or they may be holding the license but not using it to generate any income. And these are, of course, perfectly valid reasons for not being registered for self-assessment, or why they might not be registered. So it's important to ensure applicants can make that declaration and choose that route if they need to, and it won't hold up the completion of the tax check. The second question is a declaration to show that income from the licensed activity has been included in the tax return. You'll see that's a binary question, yes, no. It's a simple declaration, and we're looking to obtain information just to show that a person has reported the income earned from the license. Again, it's not about trying to validate at this point whether information supplied is accurate or anything like that. So the next screen enables the applicant to check their answers. And when the user progresses through that, there are some clever background checks which happen in real time to confirm that user's details have been verified. So that's just the check answer screen. Once you click confirm, that's the completion of the tax check. So you'll see there, there's a code, and that code's all important, but before that, you'll have seen the tax check itself is 5 multiple choice questions in total, 2 of which relate to tax. So that emphasis on simplicity runs throughout the design of the service. As I say, the code you can see is important because the applicant needs to enter this on their license application form, and this enables the licensing body to confirm that the check is complete. And I believe that's somewhat similar to some of the checks that are carried out by the DVLA in the way the interface works. The code itself is valid for 120 days, so it can be reused if there's more than one application going in, or if there's any delay before the licensing body picks up the check. So that's the check that applicants will need to carry out. I hope that's clear. I would like to quickly just show the process that licensing bodies will follow too, just to give you a full sense of how the overall journey works. And that happens once the applicant has completed the check, of course, and entered the code onto their license applications form. There will be a separate service that licensing bodies will be able to access, and this requires the licensing body to answer 4 pieces of information that will need to be provided, and this is all about identifying the applicant and matching it up in the systems behind the scenes. So the first piece of information is the all-important tax check code, followed by the type of license that's applied for. Again, multiple choice, apart from the inputting of the code, of course. So the next 2 questions ask for some basic confirmatory details. They'll differ slightly if it's a company, I think. But again, this is just about matching up the applicant with the records that we hold. And then once that's clicked through, again, some background checks, and the service confirms that the tax check code is valid. You'll see this is the sum of the information that's shared back with the licensing body, and it is very limited indeed. It doesn't include any tax-related information whatsoever. But as I say, of course, this will involve some changes to the forms that licensing bodies produce for licensing. So, I hope that gives an overview of what the tax check itself entails. While we're building the service and continuing to refine the service through user research, our focus is now increasingly shifting towards communications and engagement with stakeholders, which is why you've got me here today. Over in the autumn, in fact, I think quite imminently, we're going to be publishing a range of materials for stakeholders. That will include fact sheets and some draft social media materials that stakeholder groups might wish to disseminate. We're also beginning to circulate some briefing notes and circulars to licensing bodies and placing articles in trade media as well. And we're working to produce an implementation guide for licensing bodies as well, in addition to the information that we've already provided to them. So, as I say, this engagement comes on the back of the previous public consultations, but we're very happy and very keen to continue that process of stakeholder engagement as we move through to implementation and beyond. In terms of what users themselves can do to prepare, it's a good idea to familiarise yourself with the key HMRC digital service. So that will save time for all concerned if more users come through the digital route as opposed to reverting to other forms of contact. You can already sign up for personal and business tax accounts on gov.uk and get a range of useful information and carry out a range of tax-related services through those so I'd recommend having a look at them if you get the chance. Finally, as I say, we'll be continuing to iterate the design of the user interface for the service, as well as refining our communications, and we're continuing to shape our communications plan. So it would be really good to gather any feedback you have during the course of the day or thereafter about how best to get messaging out to the target user base, and I'm sure our comms teams will be very pleased to gather any feedback that you might have.